Grief is not to be fixed. Grief is to be felt. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. The amount of grief or the intensity of grief I have will be different from the intensity of grief someone else has. Sometimes people grieve after 30 years of losing something or losing someone because from the point I lost this person, the pain was too intense. Therefore, I shut things down. For some people, your presence is enough. You just sit there with them, that's more than enough to make them feel that they are not alone. And they will come to terms with it in their own time. It's only a pet. Let it go. What is the big deal? But for that person, that's a very real connection that they have with their pet.
Thank you, Dr. Shobitha, for joining us on our show today. And grief is something that everyone encounters in some season, at some point in their life, in different seasons. And it's very vulnerable and sensitive. And it's sometimes very hard to put in words what grief is all about. So, to gently start, I'd like to ask you, how would you define grief? And what would you say that grief is all about?
Grief is basically looked at as a complicated emotional response to something that people have lost. So, this loss, it could be a person, it could be that they have relocated to a different place and they have lost, they're losing or missing out on things from the old place. It could be loss of a job. It could be accident or loss in business. So grief, loss is not something that we are looking at here. It's the process. Anything can be a loss for a person because what is loss for me may not be loss for you. So grief has to be understood from the context of the person who's also going through the grief. So I would say grief is a complicated emotional response to a loss a person is going through. And sometimes it's very conflicting.
Yes. Is there a right way to grieve? We have different scenarios, circumstances, different situations. For example, maybe a mother's going through terminal illness, and the young child or the family members have gone through the process of going back and forth to the hospital.
Yeah.
And suddenly the mother passes away. So that grief, and maybe there is a sudden passing away of a loved one at home, maybe due to an accident. So, is there a right way to grieve? How do we really understand what grief is in such kind of extreme scenarios, or if you can throw some light on it?
Uh, there is no right or wrong way to grieve because it's all individual perceptions of how I want to grieve the loss that I've gone through. Also, because of the intensity of connection I might have had with the person or the place or the situation. And therefore, the amount of grief or the intensity of grief I have will be different from the intensity of grief someone else has. Because it's different from person to person, there's no right or wrong way to grieve. Clinically speaking, in terms of time frame, we say grief can be anywhere between 6 months to 1 year for adults. And in children, we say about 6 months. Anything more than that may not be very helpful for the person to be able to function in their everyday life. So other components of their life gets disturbed in the process. And therefore we have that clinical understanding of looking at what could be a normal grief reaction time for a person, right? Sometimes some people recover way faster in terms of grief. It's also aspect depending upon the cultural framework of how people are expected to grieve. In some cultures, you have to cry it out loud. In some cultures, you don't cry. They call someone else to cry in your place. So it's like getting the emotions relieved out of that process. In some cultures, what I've also interestingly read is, especially people who have lost their spouse, they go into a self-induced hallucinating mode where they conjure the image of the person whom they lost. And they come to terms with the fact that that person is going to be no more. So different cultures also play a major role in terms of how we grieve a loss.
Mm.
Some cultures, they say it's okay, you have to get over it. Some cultures, they say process the grief. But mostly what we are looking at is grief itself. We look at different stages people go through in grief.
Yeah.
The most basic understanding is you start off with denial. When you lose something, you're in denial of the fact that this has happened to you in the first place. And then you go to a place where you're trying to bargain. What if? What if this couldn't have happened? The what
The
if
what if
questions keep coming in a lot, right? And then they go to a place where they are, before the what ifs, they get angry,
Yeah.
denial, and then there's anger about it. And then they go into the bargaining part. And then they go into a place where they're depressed. That is where they actually feel the loss. They feel the sadness. They feel that, okay, this thing that I've prized so much is not with me anymore. So they go into the depressive phase of it. And then the final stage, what we're looking at is acceptance. Okay, now that this has happened, now what do I do with it and how do I move on? Right? Now, this is a framework we have to understand what people can go through. But this framework doesn't have to be the same for everyone. People can go back to anger from depression. Why? Especially if, say, for example, they have lost a young child. Like recently, I just read up on a parent who had lost a 9-month-old baby, and they had decided to donate the body organs of the child. That was the recent update of that. Like, what could the parents have been going through as a process of loss for them to have made this decision? Right? So, they are definitely not anywhere in any of these stages if you're talking about it like that. So, people go through grief in very different places. They will go through these stages, but it doesn't have to be in the same order, and it doesn't have to be in the same time pace. So, sometimes people grieve after 30 years of losing something or losing someone, because from the point I lost this person, the pain was too intense. Therefore, I shut things down. I shut my emotions down. I didn't cry. I didn't grieve the person. I kept it locked because I had to be functional. It could be because of various reasons. Either the pain was too intense or there was no one else to take over, and I was the only one. I had to take over the loss. The person who was lost is the breadwinner, so I had to step in. I had to do things for the house. Therefore, I didn't have a choice. So I shut things down at that point, and it comes out very later on in life. But when it comes out, it's going to be very nasty. It's not going to be good.
Is it possible to get stuck in any of these stages or phases? And
Yes.
sometimes the memories keep reoccurring. So, how do they come out of it?
That is what we call as complicated or prolonged grief. So, where people feel that they are not able to come to terms with the fact that they have gone through this loss. So, sometimes they end up feeling that the situation that they're living in is not real at all.
Okay.
It feels as if I'm there. But in their mind, they're probably reliving their whole life with the person who's no more, or in the same life that they have lost at one point of time, right? So, when the memories keep coming back, chances of people getting into or getting stuck in one of these stages is very real. And sometimes depression can be a comorbid condition when someone is going through prolonged grief like that. So they can end up having multiple episodes of depression or multiple episodes of suicidal attempts because of the intense pain that they are going through. So yes, grief can make people get stuck in one or the other stages if they have not reached out and asked for help.
Okay. And is there a, how do we respond as maybe people who are supporting people who are going through grief? How do we rightly respond? Many times we don't have the right words to comfort a person. Sometimes we say things that may hurt a person even more. But from a perspective or a person who's giving that support to a grieving person, or when we go and meet them for the first time and try to, show up for them, What is the right way to respond?
Again, there is no right or wrong way to respond in grief, but then at least being conscious of what they are going through and reading the room, understanding what that person requires at that point of time. Trying to see if we can offer support in that manner would definitely help out. Like for some people, your presence is enough. You just sit there with them, that's more than enough to make them feel that they are not alone. And they will come to terms with it in their own time, right? So telling them that I'm there for you, I'm ready to hear you out when you're ready to talk. I'm not going to force you, but I'm going to be there for you no matter what. That reassurance definitely helps a lot of people, right? Something that, especially with children and adolescents, something they struggle with is hearing statements like, you need to get over it, you will be fine, it's okay, this is not a big deal. Pushing their grief aside, right? For example, nowadays, what people also go through is pain and grief because of losing a pet. And this is something that many others may not relate to.
Correct.
It's only a pet. Let it go. What is the big deal? But for that person, that's a very real connection that they have with their pet. So understanding the context in which they are grieving and responding accordingly and not dismissing their grief. Saying that, sometimes we end up saying things like, everything has a purpose.
Correct.
Everything happens for a reason. So these are statements which can push people down, feeling that my grief is not validated.
Right.
And that can make them even more depressed or upset about the whole situation itself.
Forth to the support people are giving, and also to those who are going through grief. What is the right? I know there's no right way or wrong way to express grief, but is there a way that the expression of grief itself can be done? Many of them suppress grief and not allow it to be open about it, talk about it. But what can they do to express grief? Someone who's going through it.
See, first of all, asking for help is a big step.
Yeah.
So you preferably not be alone, be with someone, try taking help. And something that people also say is having being with people who have gone through similar experiences. So there are, in other places, we have AA groups for people who are grieving. So similar losses, being with people around same experiences, talking about it will make a lot of difference to help them to get out of the process. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of grieving is being aware and mindful that the process that you're going through is an emotional process. So grief is not to be fixed. Grief is to be felt. So you feel the grief, you feel the pain that you're going through. It's easier to deal with the emotions when you face it head on than pushing it under the rug. At that point of time, it might look very painful, but with adequate support, it is possible. So if you're taking 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, go through the process, get it sorted out at that point of time. Because once we push it down and then when it resurfaces back, we don't know how it's going to come back up. And when prolonged grief is there, what happens to a person is our functionality, our everyday function gets affected. So I'm not able to concentrate, focus on what I have to do. My other relationships in my life get affected. My social life gets affected. My work, my career, my everything else around me gets affected. More than that, my physical health and my mental health, they take a big hit because I'm feeling stuck in one place, right? So it's important that we talk sometimes for people, talking about the memories, the good memories, the bad memories. Talking about those memories helps them come to terms with the fact that, okay, now I have had these good things and bad things with this person, and it helps them, it makes it easier for them to come to terms with the process. So these are different ways that we can, or for example, if we are a caretaker, making space for them to talk about things, that will definitely help them to make sense of what they're going through. point.
Grief is not to be diminished, but it is to be felt.
Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. Shobitha. We'll come back on the same topic. We'll have more conversations. And
Sure.
anyone who's watching this, I'm sure our conversations will help them. And if they're going through a process of grief or if they're giving support to someone who's grieving.
Sure.
We'll meet in the next show.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.